Evan, thank you very much for joining us today on CISO Talks. Really appreciate it. I know you're a really busy guy, so thanks for taking the time out.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to chat.
Indeed. So, Evan, one of the things that I'd really like to explore today, I mean, I've worked in the IT security industry for a little over 20 years now. And with that experience, that's great in lots of ways because I understand the dynamics of the industry. I understand kind of problems that people are having. But your journey into this space and this industry has been quite different. And I'm interested to really just explore that a bit further because I think there is a big advantage of coming at this from a totally different angle because you're really coming at this without any of those preconceptions, any of those any of the baggage, frankly, as well. And you're just coming at this thinking about the problem. I find that really interesting that you've come at this and what the benefits you found of having done that.
Yeah, there's definitely some pros and cons. So as you're saying, my background's not in cybersecurity. I've been an entrepreneur for about 15 years, primarily working in advertising technology and applied machine learning, trying to figure out how to, create behavioral profiles, get people to click on ads has been mostly my career, for better or worse. And so, Abnormal Security is the first security company I've ever worked at, really the first time I've really worked on information security problems. And I think you're right. There's a bunch of kind of pros and cons of not having that background. I mean, the pro and the con, right, is that you don't have the preconceptions or the playbooks, right? And I think where that's helped us, I think in Abnormal Security, we're coming into an existing market, which is email security, and we've tried to really think from first principles and talk and to figure out like what is a solution that will really help our customers. And so I think coming into Abnormal Security, knowing nothing about email security, that really forced me and my founder or my co-founder and the rest of our team to like proactively go talk to if you talked to probably 100 customers before we wrote a first line of code, and we asked them, what are the problems in the market today? What are the new attacks? What are some of the trends? Why do you think this is getting through? What are some of the gaps existing technology that caused that, right? And how is that evolving? So I think by kind of jumping in to solve a problem, without knowing kind of like really, what it is, right? I think as long as you come at that with humility, I think that forces you to really understand like some of the core reasons. So I think that's like kind of on the positive side. But of course, on the negative side is I'm sure there's some kind of like best practices and playbooks that, took us months to uncover, right? That probably most people would figure out in a few minutes, right? So there's definitely some downsides there, but I think that for like a technology company focused on innovation is trying to really reinvent a new product and, solve an existing set of challenges that haven't been solved by the rest of the market. I think, coming in with a blank slate is probably, more positive than negative.
Right. Yeah, because I think one of the challenges of the industry that we're in is it can easily become an echo chamber as well. And I think that it's really good to get back to those first principles and say, well, hang on, what is actually like? Forget about the acronyms. Forget about what vendor's name you see on the. What's the problem? Like, what problem are we trying to fix? Like, let's boil it down to the essence. Is this actually fixing the problem that it set out to solve, or have we got distracted along the way? Because I think we have a real issue in this industry of shelfware. We have a real issue in this industry of people buying things because they think it's what they ought to buy, maybe what they should buy, or because it's from a vendor that they've used before, because that's something that they've been taken out for dinner on when some round table and convinced it was a good idea, right? But fundamentally, really, what it needs to be surely about is this fixing the biggest problem we have? How well is this fixing the problem that we are facing right now? Because I feel very often that gets lost. And I think there's a real benefit from coming at this without that, any of this sort of this background, where you are approaching that from the perspective, because I believe actually, to be fair, one of the ways that I've probably managed to be successful in my career is by probably not being that bright. And what I mean by that, and I mean that in the nicest possible sense to myself, and what I mean by that is I need to make sure that I understand precisely what problem that solves. Like, if it's wrapped up in acronyms, if it's wrapped up in lots of different terminology, I can't grasp it, and I won't understand it. I need to really boil it down to figure out that that's like, and if I can't understand the problem it fixes really quickly, I'm quickly switched off. I just can't. I see no value in that. And I
It's
feel
probably
that
more important in this day and age when like every product is a cloud security solution using machine learning.
Right.
So much fluff and
Exactly.
acronyms.
That's exactly it. And I think that and if you take that apart, you think about all these different terms, it would be, you could sort of live with that if people use the term consistently, but they don't. You have one company that are defining that they've got some big magic button that you press for compliance, or some big magic button you press for machine learning or AI, whatever it is. But fundamentally, when you actually dig into it, it's none of those things. Like, I mean, it's just the terminology is misused. Like, people are using abbreviations and acronyms that are wrong, and people are using things because it ranks well on Google, not because it actually addresses fixing the problem for people. And it's like, and I think that makes it very, very difficult for anybody to actually really understand what they're buying. And I think that's a challenge, but surely in some ways that must present a challenge to you, because you're coming at this from that perspective of first principles, but quite a lot of the industry has got so far down the line now. How do you fit in and start and manage to sort of cut through the noise when actually you're coming at it from a different angle? Like, how do you make sure you're using the right language, well, what I mean by right, the common language and the common verbiage that enables you to be able to be seen by people in your market? It must be tricky sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's really difficult. I mean, you mentioned this, but I think this is particularly hard in machine learning, and that's not because and I think the challenge is machine learning AI is not like a yes or no thing, right? There's levels to sophistication, right? And you can imagine, right? There's some machine learning feature I could add to add to a product by watching a YouTube video over the weekend. And like, that's some level of sophistication. You have to imagine like the sophistication that Google's using to rank search at, search results. That's like, a couple orders of magnitude, right? If not, 5 orders of magnitude more sophisticated. And the problem is like, I think especially in cybersecurity vendors is that whole spectrum is called machine learning, right? Our team is actually not a threat intelligence team, right? We are a, behavioral intelligence team. Most of our software engineers and machine learning engineers come from behavioral ad targeting. And so we are like a real like AI machine learning company. The problem is that we try not to even say that because people don't believe you, right? There's so much snake oil, right? And people have been burned just like so many times. So we actually avoid those words in all of our marketing, right? We don't talk about, if you go to our website, there's nothing about, or at least this week, right? There's nothing about, machine learning or AI. And I think that most customers, especially for us as an email security solution, ultimately the proof's in the pudding, right? And so what we do is we try to really show that to customers. We show them what the product does. We show examples of attacks. We explain how we stop it. What are the data signals we're using? We let them kind of integrate quickly, do a retroactive kind of risk assessment. Then they can find out if we stop attacks. And if they see us stopping attacks with very low false positives, then they say, okay, well, wait, how can you guys do this when other people can't? And then we explain kind of like, the machine learning and AI stuff. But I think up front, right, it's just, there's just too much snake oil in the industry. And, ultimately the proof's in the pudding. So we got to, kind of hide that a little bit.
You have to start with the proof and then work your way backwards from there about how you actually do it. Yeah. That's really
in some
interesting.
ways, like, who cares, right? Like how it works, right? Like your email security, it's like, do you stop the bad attacks or getting past my existing solutions without creating a bunch of false positives? If not, like, who cares how it works or how it doesn't work?